Hello everyone! Today I'm going over a budget commander deck that I've brewed around Mr. Negative. As usual, I've designed this deck to list for less than $45 at the time of recording, using prices listed by Scryfall, which includes our basic lands at 10 cents each, but as a list price it doesn't include costs of just shipping. So Mr. Negative is a 5/5 legendary human villain for a hefty 5 and a white and a black to cast, with vigilance and lifelink. And when he enters the battlefield, you can swap your life total with a target opponent's, and if you lose life that way, you draw that many cards. So while you might have a massive mana cost, that can also be a really strong effect that incentivizes us to play the game in a bit of an abnormal way, where we actually want to be able to heavily lower our own life totals and generally not be too fussed about losing life early on, as we'll look to steal our opponent's much healthier life totals, while also giving us the option to draw a bunch off of an ETB. Given that Mr. Negative is a 7 drop off the rip, we're going to want to have a decent amount more ramp than a typical deck, so we can reasonably get our commander out if we wish by turn 5 in most games, and while it might take a bit for us to get going, we're not going to care about, and may even welcome taking a bit of damage as we set up so that we can pass off that pain later. However, since lowering our life totals is one of the main ways we'll be looking to progress the game, we'll also want a healthy selection of effects that let us drain ourselves, be it slowly and progressively through effects that ping us for a few life here and there, or through spells that let us dump any amount of life into them for a big effect, and that way we aren't absolutely relying on our opponents having to lower our life for us. But once we have Mr. Negative out and a few ways to play around with our life total, we'll look to have at least a few blink spells in hand to let us swap our life totals at will, primarily to swap our low life total with a higher one, but these could act as something of a draw spell if instead we choose to swap our life with somebody whose total is less than ours. And finally, we'll try to slap in some creatures that contribute directly to our game plan wherever we can, along with some sizable draining effects to give us some options to finish off a player once we've swapped a low life total onto them. But that's enough of a preamble, let's get into the 99 of this deck, starting with our ramp. Starting with Wayfarer's Bauble, which we can sack to tutor a basic land onto the battlefield tapped. Some standard mana rocks including Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Talisman of Hierarchy, Orzhov Signet, Charcoal Diamond, Marble Diamond, and Mind Stone. And then we have Thought Vessel for its no max hand size effect, since we could wind up drawing a ton with a decent life swap. And then we have a couple of any color mana dorks with Ornithopter of Paradise and Mere Convert, with the latter also letting us slowly chip ourselves down. Thran Dynamo can get us a hefty amount of ramp off of one spell. And finally, while it's not exactly ramp, Kirk, Son of Yawgmoth, is mostly here for his life sync and cost reduction abilities. But now that we've ramped, let's go over our pile of blink effects. Starting with some creature-based ones, we have Flicker Wisp and Guardian of Ghirapur, 3/1 and 3/3 flyers that let you slow blink a permanent, or a creature or artifact for the latter, when it enters. Salvation Swan slow blinks a creature on ETB, but it has flash and gives a blink creature a flying counter, while Restoration Angel also has flash, but instead it fast blinks a non-angel creature. Then transitioning over to instant spells, there's Rescue the Foal, as a 2-drop fast blink spell that's attached to Pegasus Guardian, a 3/3 flyer that we can access later on that could also net us some extra 1/1 flyers. Cloud Shift and Ephemerate are some 1-drop fast blink spells, with Ephemerate having Rebound, allowing us to free cast it a second time at the beginning of our next upkeep. Liberate, Parting Gust, and Getaway Glamour are 2-drop slow blink effects, with the latter two also being able to act as removal, with Parting Gust permanently exiling a target non-token creature if you gift an opponent a tapped fish, and Getaway Glamour having an additional spree cost to destroy a target creature with the greatest power. Slip on the Ring, Justicier's Portal, and Flicker of Fate are all fast blink spells, with the first giving you the whole "the ring tempts you" mechanic, Portal giving the blink creature first strike until the end of the turn, and Flicker of Fate being able to blink an enchantment. And wrapping up we have Acrobatic Maneuver and Scroll Shift, which fast blink a creature or artifact or enchantment for Scroll Shift, and have you draw one. And now I'd like to go over a handful of cards that in one way or another could let us heavily lower our life totals before we aim to swap ours out. Starting with Blood Celebrant, which lets us pay 1 life to convert a black mana into one of any color, which we could just convert it back to a black mana and repeat as much as we need to drain ourselves as low as we're willing to risk. Wall of Blood is a wall that lets us pay life to give it +1/+1 for the turn. Unspeakable Symbol lets us pay 3 life to give a target creature a +1/+1 counter. Doom Whisperer is a 6/6 with flying and trample, so a solid piece to try to finish someone off after we've given him a life swap, which also let us pay 2 life to Surveil 2, a great life drain source and a way for us to clean up the top of our library. Evra, Heliasan Witness, is a 1-off life drain, as it's a 4/4 with lifelink that we can pay 4 mana into to exchange our life total with Evra's power. And then we have Phyrexian Processor, a 4-drop artifact that lets us pay any amount of life as it enters, and then for tapping it with 4 more mana, we can make an XX black minion creature token, where X was a life paid as the processor entered the battlefield. Now I'd like to go over a few cards that have some really strong effects for this deck, but there was only a few of them and made it hard to put them in a given chapter. This includes Phyrexian Unlife, making it so we don't lose the game for having 0 or less life, though any additional damage beyond 0 life is treated as a poison counter. There's also Sanguine Bond, so that whenever we gain life, a target opponent loses that much life, which could be even more valuable when we look to use our commander's ETB to draw. Exsanguinate and Debt to the Deathless are some ways that we can drain each of our opponents out once as a non-combat way to knock some opponents out. And Staff of Completion does a lot of the things we generally want in this deck. It's a consistent way for us to drain our own life, while we can get some mana or some draw from it. Speaking of draw though, it would be risky to mostly rely on our commander for it, especially early game, so let's go over some of those spells. There's Sign in Blood to have a target player draw 2 and lose 2 life. Can be useful for us, or it could be used to force someone to lose the last 1 or 2 life. Knight's Whisper simply has us draw 2 and lose 2 life. Risky Shortcut has us draw 2 cards and then each player loses 2 life. Read the Bones, Dire Sight, and Risky Research all work about the same, having you first either scry or surveil 2, and then you draw 2 and lose 2 life. Gruesome Realization either lets us draw 2 and lose 2 life, or it could act as something of a Weenies board wipe, giving our opponent's creatures -1/-1 until the end of the turn. Then there's Greed, letting us pay 1 black and 2 life to draw a card, which we can activate multiple times a turn. And I'll wrap up with Necrologia, an instant that you cast during your end step, and you can pay any amount of life into to draw that many cards. And Necropotence at Home, letting you pay any amount of life at the beginning of your end step to draw that many cards, though you do skip your draw step, and your max hand size is reduced to 5, and things going into your graveyard get exiled instead. But now let's go over some ways that we can interact with our opponent's board outside of blink spells. Starting with Swords to Plowshares and Path to Exile, 1 drops to exile a target creature. Vendetta, a 1 drop to destroy a non-black creature, and we lose life equal to that creature's toughness. Reckless Spite, letting us destroy 2 target non-black creatures, and we lose 5 life. Ravenous Chupacabra to destroy a target creature, and get an extra body onto the field. Fear the Swarm, letting us destroy a target creature or enchantment, and we lose life equal to that permanent's mana value. Disenchant, letting us destroy a target enchantment or artifact. Generous Gift and Stroke of Midnight to destroy a permanent, non-land for Stroke of Midnight, though that permanent's controller does get a vanilla 3/3 or 1/1 in return. And for a couple of wipes, we have Fumigate to destroy all creatures, and we gain 1 life for each creature destroyed that way. And Austere Command, letting us choose 2 of 4 options, destroying all artifacts, all enchantments, all creatures with mana value 3 or less, or all creatures with mana value 4 or greater. But now that we've gone through all the spells in this deck, let's go over our land base. First up is Myriad Landscape, which we can sack to tutor 2 of the same basic land onto the battlefield tapped. Path of Ancestry and Command Tower to tap for either black or white. Exotic Orchard, which will likely tap for at least one of our 2 colors. Thran Portal, which we'd choose a basic land type for it as it enters, and it helps us to lower our life totals, as it costs 1 life to access any mana from it. Spire of Industry lets us pay 1 life to get a mana of any color, provided we control an artifact. And then for duels, we have Caves of Koilios, Shine Shadow Snarl, Isolated Chapel, Fetid Heath, Tainted Field, Desolate Mire, Temple of Silence, and Orzhov Basilica. Then there's Reliquary Tower as another way for us to get no max hand size. Rogue's Passage can give us a way to ensure that we get a creature through on somebody, likely as a way to finish someone off. And then we'll fill the rest of this deck with 12 basic plains and 11 basic swamps. But now that we've gone through all 100 cards in this deck, let's take a look at its list price. And as you can see here, this deck is currently listing for somewhere around $44 at the time of recording, which does include our basic lands at 10 cents each, but as a list price, it isn't including our costs such as shipping. Now before closing out this video, I'd like to suggest some upgrades or alternative cards you may wish to consider if you're building this deck, especially with a higher budget. First, for some better ramp, we have Gilded Lotus and Decanter of Endless Water, which the latter is another way to access no max hand size. Platinum Angel and Angel's Grace can help us avoid losing in a pinch, given we are playing with fire a bit by lowering our life total so much. Veto of the Duskgrows and Enduring Tenacity are additional Sanguine Bond type effects, and Bloodletter of Aclazotz makes it so our life draining effect is doubly effective. We have Teleportation Circle and Conjurer's Closet as some consistent ways for us to be able to blink during our end step. Necropotence, though I don't normally suggest game changers, this one is just straight up a better version of Necrodominance, so it kind of seems silly not to mention it. Then there's Imp's Mischief and Withering Torment for a little bit more interaction. False Cure and Tainted Remedy make it so we can lose life from Mr. Negative to draw a bunch, and still make it so that the opponent we traded life with winds up losing life, or the game. And Grand Abolisher makes it so our opponents won't be able to stop us from enacting our own plans on our own turn. But I should close out this video, so if you'd like to build, adapt, upgrade, or otherwise play with this deck, the link, as always, is in the description down below. Maybe drop the video a like or the channel a sub if you think I've earned it. But regardless, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.